Most people think they're trading the market, but in reality, they're trading themselves. Just pause for a moment, because the stats are brutal. Most retail traders lose simply because they act without awareness. Most trading mistakes happen in less than a few seconds of emotional impulse. Most traders know what to do, yet can't do it when it matters most. And most trading failures are rooted not in strategy, but in the hidden habits of the mind. Your mind, the same thing you depend on for every decision, might be the very thing quietly destroying your trading performance. And the scariest part is that it doesn't happen loudly. It doesn't warn you. It doesn't shout before it sabotages your trade. It whispers. It nudges. It pulls you away from discipline just enough that you barely even notice the shift. And before you know it, you've done the one thing you promised yourself you wouldn't do again. Every trader has felt this moment. The screen is calm, the charts look normal, and yet something inside you becomes restless. It feels like energy. It feels like intuition. But in truth, it's a psychological trap disguised as action. Mark Douglas spent his entire life explaining this phenomenon. You think you're responding to the market, but you're actually responding to the emotional triggers built into your conditioning. They're automatic, they're invisible, and they're powerful. Why does this happen? Because the brain hates uncertainty. Neuroscience tells us that uncertainty activates the same survival circuits as physical danger. When your trade is open, you're not just watching a candlestick, you're negotiating with fear, hope, stress, memory, and identity. Jesse Livermore understood this long before science proved it. He said the real battle was never the price, it was the human reactions around it. And the trader who loses control of those reactions loses everything. This part is important because this is where the sabotage begins. The moment uncertainty hits your nervous system, your brain automatically starts hunting for short-term emotional relief. Not long-term profit, not smart decisions, relief. And that relief often comes in the form of impulsive entries, revenge trades, closing winners too early, or chasing losses. These are not bad habits, they are survival responses misfiring inside a financial environment. Now here's the pattern interrupt. You might think this means something is wrong with you, that you're not disciplined, that you're not serious enough, but that's not the truth. The truth is that your brain is doing what it was designed to do. Brian Tracy explains this beautifully. The brain will always choose the path of least resistance unless you consciously train it. So what you're fighting isn't weakness, you're fighting untrained mental machinery. And this brings us to the core question. Why does your mind sabotage your trades? Because the emotional brain is faster than the logical brain. The emotional brain moves first. It makes the micro decisions. It reacts before you can think. And unless you build internal structure, unless you build identity around discipline, you will always find yourself doing the opposite of what you planned. You will always find yourself becoming the trader you don't want to be. Now, let's get deeper. What exactly is happening inside the mind when it kills a trade? It starts with a trigger, a sudden movement, a candle spike, a memory of a previous loss, a fear of missing out, or even boredom. The emotional brain fires immediately. It tells you, act now, do something, protect yourself, or catch the move. If you don't, you'll lose. And when this thought hits your nervous system, the urge becomes physical. Your hands move toward the mouse, your breathing shifts, your posture tightens, and suddenly you're not trading strategy, you're trading emotion. This is what Mark Douglas called emotional contamination. It's when the mind hijacks the trading plan without your permission. It's not obvious at first, it feels like logic, but it's not. It's the emotional brain trying to take control of the cockpit while the rational brain is still waking up. And unless you interrupt that pattern, the emotional brain will execute a losing trade with complete confidence. So, how do you interrupt it? You start with awareness. The most dangerous trading mistakes happen when you're not aware that you're slipping. You think you're calm, you think you're focused, but in reality, small emotional micro-shifts are building inside you. Livermore used to leave the room when he felt these shifts.
Modern neuroscience calls this a state change. When your internal state changes, your decision quality changes with it. And awareness is the only thing that gives you back control. Now, let's move from awareness to identity. This is where real transformation happens. You don't rise to the level of your strategy, you fall to the level of your mental identity. If your identity is built on being reactive, emotional, impatient, or hungry for action, then no amount of technical analysis will save you. But if your identity becomes that of a calm, structured, disciplined operator, then you will naturally execute smarter, cleaner, more consistent trades without forcing it. This is why Ed Seykota always emphasized self-mastery. He understood that the market doesn't reward intelligence, it rewards emotional clarity. The trader with 1,000 indicators but no emotional stability loses. The trader with a simple plan and a regulated mind wins, not because of luck, but because consistency is the result of identity. Now here's the emotional transition. You might be remembering the times your mind sabotaged you, the moments you said you wouldn't overtrade and still did, the moments you said you'd wait for confirmation and still jumped early, the moments you said you'd stop trading for the day, but your mind pulled you back in. These memories aren't reminders of failure. They're proof that your emotional brain has been running the show. But here's the empowering part. Once you recognize that your mind is the enemy inside the gate, you can disarm it. You can retrain it. You can reorganize your habits, your responses, and your internal triggers. And once you do, the sabotage ends. The emotional brain no longer gets automatic control. You take ownership of the cockpit again. This brings us to the practical foundation. The first transformation is not a strategy change, it is a state change. When your mind is calm, your trades become clean. When your mind is structured, your discipline becomes automatic. When your mind is trained, your emotional impulses lose power. This is how you break the hidden patterns that have been draining your account. And the final shift for this part, you must understand that your mind is not your enemy. It only becomes the enemy when it's untrained. When you train it, structure it, and lead it, your mind becomes your strongest trading edge, because the trader who masters their internal world doesn't just trade charts, they trade clarity, patience, and emotional neutrality. Your journey begins with awareness. The awareness that the biggest threat to your trading success is not the market, it's the untrained version of you. Once you see it, you can change it, and when you change it, you become the trader you always knew you could be.
There comes a moment in every trader's evolution when they realize something uncomfortable. The mind doesn't sabotage trades randomly. It follows patterns, invisible mental loops, automatic internal programs that activate the moment pressure enters the chart. And until these loops are exposed, a trader can study for years, practice for months, and still repeat the same mistakes as if trapped inside a psychological echo chamber. The first loop is the urgency loop. The emotional brain convinces you that action equals progress, that movement equals opportunity, that clicking the button releases the tension building inside you. And this is where neuroscience becomes important. The brain rewards immediate action with a burst of emotional relief, even if the action is destructive. So the urgent trade feels right, not because it's smart, but because it temporarily silences the internal discomfort. The second loop is the memory loop. Every trader carries emotional residue from past wins and losses. You think you're analyzing the chart, but your mind is actually comparing the present moment to a previous moment that felt similar. This is why a simple candle spike can send a shock through your system. It triggers stored emotional data. Mark Douglas explained that unprocessed emotional memory distorts risk perception. And when your perception becomes distorted, your decisions follow. Then comes the expectation loop. This is one of the most dangerous mental programs. It tricks you into believing the market owes you something, a recovery, a win, a reward for patience. Your brain starts building predictions that feel like certainty. And when the market doesn't behave the way your mind demanded, frustration enters, judgment becomes cloudy, and emotional contamination begins to rise. Now here's the pattern interrupt. These loops aren't signs of weakness. They are signs of being human. Even the great traders, the ones you read about in biographies, the ones whose stories shaped market psychology, they all fought these loops. Jesse Livermore battled internal conflict his entire career. Ed Seykota mastered his loops through simplicity and self-awareness. Brian Tracy taught the idea that the brain repeats whatever emotional pattern you reinforce. You are not broken. You are simply operating without updated mental programming. This brings us to a deeper truth. Your mind doesn't want to help you win trades. It wants to help you avoid discomfort. This is why discipline feels hard. Discipline forces the brain to stay inside discomfort long enough for a logical decision to form. But the emotional brain wants out immediately. It wants comfort. It wants relief. It wants certainty. And because the markets offer none of these, the brain tries to manufacture them through impulsive action. Let's talk about the sabotage mechanism itself, the psychological autopilot. This autopilot takes over the moment your internal state shifts. If your breathing changes, your shoulders tense, your attention narrows, your mind enters survival mode. In survival mode, logic becomes secondary. You start measuring trades emotionally instead of strategically. You start seeking safety instead of structure. And this is where most trades fall apart. The solution begins with awareness of state. A trader who manages their internal state manages their decisions. A trader who manages their decisions manages their outcome. Jesse Livermore used rituals to regulate state before placing trades. Modern performance psychology calls this state priming. It means shaping your mental environment before the chart shapes it for you. Now let's bring this into a concrete scenario. Imagine you're watching a setup develop. It looks clean at first. Then the market hesitates. A small spike appears. Your body reacts. Your mind begins sending emotional signals disguised as logic. You feel the urge to adjust your position, to jump early, to secure something before it disappears. This urge is not strategy. It's the urgency loop activating, and unless you interrupt it, your mind will override your plan. Interrupting the loop requires physical awareness, a deep breath, a subtle posture shift, a conscious reminder of identity. These small actions reset the emotional brain and give the rational brain time to step forward. Neuroscience shows that a micro-pause strengthens the connection between awareness and action. Without the pause, the emotional brain defaults to old habits. Now let's discuss identity, because this is the real engine behind consistent behavior. You cannot outperform your identity. If you see yourself as an inconsistent trader, you will act inconsistently. If you see yourself as someone who panics under pressure, you will panic. If you see yourself as a trader who tries to be disciplined, you will always feel like you're fighting yourself. Identity isn't a motivational idea. It is a neurological filter that determines what actions feel natural. This is why building a trader identity is essential. Not an identity based on results, not profit, not loss, but an identity built on process. A structured, calm, emotional neutral operator. A trader who acts from clarity instead of urgency. A trader who trusts preparation more than impulses. When this identity becomes internal, discipline is no longer something you force, it becomes something you are. Now let's enter the emotional transition. You may have spent months or years wondering why you keep repeating the same mistakes. You may have blamed your strategy, your timing, the market conditions, or even luck, but now you can see the truth more clearly. The problem isn't knowledge. It isn't skill, it's the hidden loops inside the mind that have been steering your decisions without your awareness. But this realization is not discouraging, it's empowering. Because once the loop is identified, it loses its invisibility. And once it loses invisibility, it loses control. Awareness breaks the pattern. Identity replaces uncertainty. Structure replaces impulse. The mind stops being the enemy and starts becoming a trained instrument. And this is where authority becomes important again. Mark Douglas taught emotional neutrality. Livermore embodied state control. Seykota prioritized adaptiveness. Brian Tracy emphasized mental conditioning. Neuroscience now gives scientific weight to the idea that your mind can be rewired. You are not stuck with the mental loops you inherited from stress, fear, or past mistakes. You can rebuild them. Now let's talk about something most traders never consider. The mind doesn't sabotage you because it hates you. It sabotages you because it wants to protect you from emotional pain. But the market interprets emotional protection as reckless behavior. When the emotional brain tries to protect you, it often destroys you financially. So the goal is not to fight the mind, but to retrain it so its protection aligns with your long-term objectives.
This leads to the practical shift. Your mind must be trained to feel safe with uncertainty. This is the heart of trading psychology. The trader who becomes comfortable with waiting becomes dangerous. The trader who becomes comfortable with patience becomes consistent. The trader who becomes comfortable with discipline becomes profitable. And this comfort is not a natural gift. It is a trained state. And now the final transition of this part. Once you understand the loops, you begin to see the market differently. You see the moments where the sabotage begins. You notice the internal shifts. You feel the impulses before they take over. And in that awareness, you reclaim control. Not through force, not through fear, through identity, structure, and clarity. The mind that once sabotaged your trades becomes the mind that protects them. And that shift becomes the foundation of everything that follows.
Every trader has felt the moment when a calm chart suddenly feels dangerous. Nothing dramatic happens. No major candle, no news, no sudden shift in trend. Yet inside the mind, a wave rises, a tightening in the chest, a rush behind the eyes, a sense that something is slipping out of control. This internal storm doesn't come from the market. It comes from the emotional patterns encoded in your nervous system. And once these patterns activate, they begin the silent chain reaction that pulls you into self-destructive trades. The mind doesn't sabotage you during chaos. It sabotages you during silence, during waiting, during uncertainty. This is where the emotional patterns live. They wait for boredom, fear, hope, or pressure. And when they spark, your entire perception shifts. You stop seeing the chart for what it is and start seeing it through the lens of internal discomfort. This transformation is subtle, which is why so many traders miss it. Let's expose the first emotional pattern, the anticipation pattern. This pattern creates illusions. It convinces you that something is about to happen even when nothing is happening. The emotional brain hates stillness, so it creates imaginary setups, imaginary opportunities, imaginary danger. Livermore knew this pattern well. He used to say the waiting was harder than the trading. Modern neuroscience explains why. Anticipation activates emotional circuits more intensely than real events. Then comes the pressure pattern. This pattern emerges the moment you feel the weight of expectations, expectations you put on yourself, expectations to recover losses, expectations to prove your skill, expectations to perform like a disciplined trader. Pressure distorts your vision. It makes normal candles look threatening. It makes small moves feel personal. Pressure tells you that every trade is a test of your worth. And once that belief takes hold, your decisions become emotional instead of strategic. Next is the doubt pattern. Doubt is one of the most destructive forces in trading. It attacks your confidence at the exact moment you need clarity. You might have a solid setup, you might have a clean bias, but the doubt pattern whispers that you're wrong, that the market knows more than you, that every candle is a sign that your idea is falling apart. This pattern triggers hesitation, premature exits, and reactive entries. Mark Douglas warned traders that doubt is the mind's way of searching for emotional comfort, not logical truth. Now here's the pattern interrupt. You are not experiencing these emotional shifts because you are weak or unskilled. You are experiencing them because the brain is not optimized for high-stakes decision-making. The human mind wasn't built for fast-moving uncertainty, financial pressure, fluctuating data, or unpredictable environments. The great traders weren't born with stronger minds. They trained their minds to stop reacting to emotional patterns. Once you see this, everything changes. You stop blaming yourself. You stop attacking your confidence. You stop thinking you lack discipline. And you start to understand that your mind is simply running emotional programs that were never designed for trading. This realization gives you power. It gives you clarity. It gives you space to rebuild. Let's go deeper into the emotional mechanics. When anticipation, pressure, or doubt activate, the emotional brain floods your system with signals that feel urgent, heavy, and logical. But these signals are not based on analysis. They're based on survival instincts. And survival instincts see loss as danger. They see uncertainty as threat. They see waiting as vulnerability. That's why the urge to act feels physical. It's the same circuitry that once kept humans alive in dangerous environments. This is where Ed Sekoda's wisdom becomes crucial. He understood that the emotional brain cannot be suppressed by force. Suppression creates more tension. More tension creates stronger impulses. Instead, the emotional brain must be acknowledged, observed, and redirected. Sekoda knew that neutrality isn't achieved through willpower, it's achieved through self-regulation. Self-regulation is the ability to feel the emotional wave without obeying it. It's the ability to watch the pressure rise without reacting, It's the ability to feel doubt without collapsing. Neuroscience calls this emotional decoupling. When you decouple sensation from action, you become free. You stop making emotional trades. You stop chasing relief. You start trading from perspective, not pressure. Now let's connect this to identity. A trader who sees themselves as chaotic will create chaos. A trader who believes they crack under pressure will behave that way. A trader who thinks they must fight their emotions will constantly feel drained. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes decisions. Decisions shape outcomes. When your identity shifts, your emotional patterns begin to lose grip. Identity building means defining yourself not by your past mistakes, but by the trader you choose to become. A calm operator, a patient thinker, a structured executor, a disciplined professional. When this identity becomes part of your self-image, the emotional brain begins adapting to it naturally. Brian Tracy taught that the subconscious follows identity more strongly than intention. If you become the kind of trader who handles emotion with composure, your actions begin to match that identity naturally. It's time to look at one of the most damaging emotional patterns, the illusion of control. This pattern convinces you that if you take more trades, watch more charts, or adjust positions constantly, you gain control. But this is emotional control, not strategic control. The emotional brain wants to feel in charge even when it's making the situation worse. This illusion drains mental energy, fractures discipline, and creates a cycle of over-involvement that destroys objectivity. Breaking this pattern requires surrender, not giving up, surrendering the emotional need to control the uncontrollable. The market doesn't need you to control it. Your job is to control your responses, control your impulses, control your state. The illusion of control fades when you realize that true mastery is internal, not external. Now let's shift into emotional transformation. Every emotional pattern you experience, anticipation, pressure, or doubt, has a purpose. They are not flaws, they are signals. Signals that you're entering an emotional state that requires awareness. When you learn to interpret these signals, they become strengths. They become early warnings that keep you from falling into the same mental traps. And here is where the true evolution begins. Once you become aware of these patterns, your emotional reactions slow down. Your mind becomes quieter. Your decisions become cleaner. You no longer feel the urge to escape discomfort. Instead, you observe it. You breathe through it. You stay aligned with your plan. And suddenly, the mind that once sabotaged your trades becomes the mind that protects them. This transformation is not dramatic. It doesn't happen in a flash. It happens through repeated awareness, repeated calmness, repeated internal alignment. Over time, your emotional patterns weaken, your clarity strengthens, and your identity solidifies. And when that shift happens, your trading stops feeling like a fight. It begins feeling like a craft.
There comes a turning point when a trader finally understands the real enemy. It isn't the chart. It isn't the market makers. It isn't the volatility, the spreads, or the timing. It's the untrained, reactive, emotional version of themselves. And once this truth is accepted, the entire foundation of trading changes. You stop trying to outsmart the market and start trying to outgrow the version of you that keeps sabotaging your potential. This is where the real work begins, not in indicators, not in strategies, not in systems, in the mind. In the internal space where self-doubt lives, where impulses rise, where fear hijacks logic, and where old emotional patterns still echo. And if you want to trade like a professional, you must reshape this inner landscape. Because everything you want, confidence, clarity, consistency, lives on the other side of mental reconstruction. Let's start with the concept of emotional leverage. Most traders use emotional energy against themselves. They let stress push them to force trades. They let fear shrink their decision-making. They let frustration drag them into revenge. But emotional energy can be redirected. It can sharpen discipline. It can reinforce patience. It can power consistency. It can fuel clarity. Your emotions are not the enemy. They are raw energy waiting to be aligned with your identity. Next comes the idea of mental filtration. Every trader receives internal signals throughout the session: impulses, thoughts, urges, fears, stories, predictions. Without filtration, these signals blend together into noise, and noise creates chaos. The professional trader filters aggressively. They recognize which signals come from discipline and which come from emotion. They follow the signals that align with structure and ignore everything else. Mark Douglas spent his life emphasizing that clarity comes from filtered perception, not from more information. Now here's the pattern interrupt. You may think mental mastery is about becoming emotionless. It's not. It's about becoming unmoved, unshaken, a calm operator who feels everything, but responds selectively. This is what Jesse Livermore struggled to explain when he talked about detaching from the market, while still being fully present. It's the ability to observe emotions without obeying them, to feel pressure without collapsing under it, to feel temptation without acting on it. This leads to the next transformation, the reframe. Most traders frame losses as personal failure. They frame drawdowns as proof of incompetence. They frame mistakes as identity. But the professional reframes everything. Losses become data. Mistakes become feedback. Drawdowns become recalibration periods. A reframe shifts your emotional response. And when your emotional response changes, your behavior changes. Brian Tracy taught that the meaning you attach to events determines how your subconscious reacts. Now let's talk about the reinforcement loop. The brain strengthens whatever you repeat. If you repeatedly act impulsively, the brain builds neural pathways that make impulsive behavior easier. If you repeatedly break your rules, the brain normalizes rule breaking. But if you repeatedly follow your plan, even in small ways, the brain begins reinforcing discipline. This is why consistency is not about big wins. It's about small repetitions. Every moment of discipline becomes a vote for your identity. And this brings you to the concept of mental automation. The highest level traders don't force discipline, they embody it. Their emotional brain becomes aligned with their trading identity. Their automatic responses become clean instead of chaotic. Their impulses become filtered instead of destructive. This is not luck. This is not talent. This is the result of neural repetition, emotional awareness, and identity alignment. Let's shift into the deeper layers of psychological reconstruction. The emotional brain will always try to protect you from pain, loss, uncertainty, failure, embarrassment. But you must train it to understand that avoiding discomfort creates more pain in the long run. Waiting is uncomfortable. Following rules is uncomfortable. Watching a winning trade breathe is uncomfortable. But these discomforts lead to growth. Neuroscience confirms that the brain rewires when you willingly sit in discomfort with awareness. Now enters the idea of internal dialogue. Every trader speaks to themselves silently, whether they realize it or not. Some speak with fear, some with pressure, some with frustration, some with discipline. The words you tell yourself shape your emotional state, and your emotional state shapes your actions. When you shift your internal dialogue from panic to clarity, from doubt to structure, from urgency to patience, the mind follows. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is replacing emotional prediction with logical observation. The emotional brain wants to predict everything. It wants certainty. It wants control. But prediction creates disappointment, entitlement, and frustration. Observation creates neutrality, awareness, and calmness. The trader who observes instead of predicts sees the market for what it is, not what they want it to be. Now let's move into the construction of mental resilience. Resilience isn't built during winning streaks. It's built during moments of internal resistance. When you feel the urge to overtrade, but choose stillness instead. When you feel the temptation to chase, but choose patience. When you feel the pressure to fix a loss immediately, but choose discipline. Every time you override emotional reactivity, you strengthen the neural circuits of resilience. This is where Ed Sikota's wisdom becomes powerful. He believed that personal growth and trading growth were inseparable. You cannot evolve as a trader without evolving as a person. Your habits, your attitudes, your emotional regulation, your self-awareness, they all bleed into your trading decisions. The market exposes whatever part of you is not yet developed. And now we reach a deeper truth. Consistency is not created by forcing yourself to act right. It is created by becoming the version of yourself who naturally acts right. Your identity must shift, not into perfection, not into cold emotionlessness, but into a calm, structured, self-led operator who respects the plan more than the impulse. The identity shift is the ultimate transformation. Let's create an emotional transition here. Think about every moment you sabotaged yourself. Every time you clicked too early. Every time you moved stops out of fear. Every time you chased a losing trade because you felt the pressure to fix everything immediately. These moments weren't failures. They were signals. Signals telling you that your emotional brain still held more power than your disciplined identity. But now that you can see it, you're no longer blind. And once you're no longer blind, you're no longer trapped. Now comes the practical rebuilding. Calmness becomes your baseline. Observation replaces prediction. Stillness replaces urgency. Structure replaces fear. Identity replaces impulse. This is the evolution of a trader. This is the internal rewiring that separates the professional from the emotional speculator. When your mind becomes disciplined, your actions become disciplined. And when your actions become disciplined, the results eventually follow. And here is the final transformation. Your mind is no longer killing your trades. It's protecting them. It's filtering impulses. It's regulating emotions. It's aligning you with your long-term vision instead of short-term relief. This is the moment where trading stops feeling like chaos and starts feeling like mastery. Not mastery of the market, mastery of yourself. You have the ability to become that trader, the one who stays calm, the one who waits, the one who acts with precision, the one who doesn't break under pressure. Every skill you need is already inside you. It simply needs structure, awareness, repetition, and identity. And now, before you go, take a moment. If this script connected with you, if it shifted something inside you, if it helped you see your mind from a deeper angle, then make sure you join this mission. Hit subscribe, like the video, and stay connected with Mind for Trade, where we turn traders into disciplined, mentally strong, emotionally controlled operators. Your journey is just beginning, and I'm here to guide you through every step of it.